Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Oh, we do the quorum first. April, can you read the roll call? I should say, good evening and welcome to the City Council for April the 6th, 2021. We'll have the quorum call at this time, and we will begin by asking our city secretary to call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Councilman De La Garza,
I am present.
Councilman Bachnight,
Here.
Councilwoman Scott,
Here.
Councilman Young,
Here.
Councilman Lofgren,
I'm here remotely.
and Mayor Pro Tem Solis.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, can you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we remain standing? Can we remain standing for a prayer? At this time, we will take a moment of silence to reflect upon the risks and the challenges that our law enforcement officers face every day on our behalf. Today, we think particularly about State Trooper Chad Walker and Capitol Police Officer William Evans, who both lost their lives in the line of duty last week. Thank you. Sitting in city chambers remains limited to allow for social distancing, and there were still many residents in our high-risk population. For this reason, we will also continue allowing citizen participation through video conferencing. To learn about all the ways you can watch the meeting and participate remotely, we encourage you to visit www.victoriatextgov.gov/talk-to-council. There are many options for how you can participate in our meeting tonight, ranging from watching on TV or speaking to citizens' comments through Zoom. Announcements. Mr. Garza, do we have any announcements this evening?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Just very briefly, I want to remind the public about municipal court, and they will be hosting a Java with the Judge meet and greet this Friday, November. No, I'm sorry. It's the wrong dates on this. Yeah, there you go. The 16th, April 16th at Vela Farms from 9 to 10 a.m. Sorry, I have the wrong text on this note. But in any case, Derek, I don't know if you was that the correct date and time? Okay. So April 16th, 9 to 10 a.m. at Vela Farms.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to have a proclamation for Mayor Raleigh Mccoy Memorial Month proclamation. And we'd like Kay to come up, and all the council is going to come up with you. Yes.
Whereas native Raleigh Mccoy was sworn in as mayor of Victoria, Texas in May 2019, Mayor Mccoy held many positions before becoming mayor of his hometown, including husband, father, architect, and civic leader. And whereas Raleigh Mccoy was an alumnus of Victoria College and Texas A&M University, Mayor Mccoy earned his Bachelor of Environmental Design and Master of Architecture degrees before returning to Victoria to work for his longtime mentor, Warren Young, forming Young and McCoy Architects from 1979 to 1995 before opening his own firm, Raleigh McCoy and Associates. RMA Architects and Interior Design LLP grew into a successful firm staffing 6 architects. His firm was involved in many notable designs in the Victoria area. And whereas throughout Mayor McCoy's life, he was deeply active as a civic leader, involving himself in many local organizations, including Victoria Downtown Rotary Club, Victoria Trinity School Board, Victoria Building and Standards Commission, and the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, to only name a few. Whereas Mayor McCoy's love of Victoria led him to run for and become elected to the office of mayor in May 2019, sworn in by his son, Judge Tim McCoy. Raleigh's dedication led to the city through unprecedented events such as the global coronavirus pandemic and the record-breaking ice storm of February 2021. Whereas Mayor McCoy continued to represent Victoria through involvement with many other organizations, including VISD Technology Advisory Committee, Gulf Bend Regional Collaborative Volunteer, Chamber of Commerce, the Victoria Economic Development Corporation, TML Region 11, Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation, and the I-69 Alliance, whereas Mayor McCoy was devoted to his faith and was a practicing member of St. Francis Episcopal Church. He obtained a theological education by ministry from the School of Theology, whereas Mayor McCoy will be deeply missed throughout the community in which he strove to unite through his civic work and later through public servitude as mayor. Now therefore I, Josephine E. Solis, by the authority vested in me as the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Victoria, designate April 2021 as Mayor Raleigh McCoy Memorial Month in Victoria, Texas.
At this time, I'll ask, first I'll say something, and then all the city council members will say something to Kate. Kate, I met Raleigh during one of the prayer services for the mosque, and we were talking, and he said, Josie, you know, things like this wouldn't happen if people would just learn to love each other. And I really, really admired him for saying that. And it showed in the work that he did. He truly loved everybody. And I thank you for letting us have him for that 1.5 years. I know that, you know, that was his passion, and I loved him for it. Thank you.
I'd like to say something. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Mark.
I apologize, Kay, for not being there. Being mayor was a perfect job for Raleigh. He cared deeply about Victoria. He was a great gentleman, a scholar, a great communicator, and a great leader. He valued people's opinion, everybody's opinion, and he would not offer his till he got everybody else's. Two things were important to him. He wanted Victoria to move forward, and he understood it had to grow. Economic growth was very important to him. But the second really important thing to him was that it includes all of Victoria. No part of Victoria should be left out of the growth. I will miss him. He's a great friend. Thank you.
Hi, Kay. There's a big emptiness in this room. He filled this room with his smile, with his welcomeness, just his vision that he had for Victoria, and especially for parts of my district, large parts of my district. I didn't really know how to do it, and he did it in an extremely short time. He's truly missed. Instead of us taking him under our wings as a new person on the council, he took us under his wing and said, you know, we're going to do this right. And now with him gone, we're going to continue that vision. And I thank you for sharing him with us.
Hi, Kate. Raleigh grew to be very special to me. You know, when I moved back to town, I got to work on them in great depth. The first project that we did in town was the Victoria Country Club remodel. He was the architect, and he really took the time to spend with me and teach me about constructability and construction, and help me further understand the codes from his perspective, which he and I often talked about different code issues and construction, and a nice friendship grew out of it. I was really happy that he got elected mayor. I can't believe how effective he was in the 2 years that we got to have him. He re-energized the entire council, and he put us on a perfect path. I look forward to continuing that path, and really, really am going to miss him dearly. And thank you for sharing him with us as well.
Yeah, I feel like he was taken from us way too soon. I've, of course, known him and known you for years in different capacities. When he first was elected as mayor, he was a little bit rough around the edges. And I just so appreciated so quickly that he was so responsive to comments, to suggestions. I kind of called him down one time in a meeting, and he appreciated it. And it really surprised me, but he responded to it, and those little roughness around the edges were gone almost immediately. And I echo what everyone says. He was so effective. He was not done. There's so many things that he put in motion, and we all feel that drive behind us. And a lot of the community doesn't really understand that when we say that we want to continue that course. But maybe some of these comments explain it, that he wanted all of Victoria to be better and all of it to be included in everything. And it was just a pleasure to have him as mayor, and I'm going to miss him.
Hi, Kay. It's funny walking in here and not looking over there and seeing his hat over on the side. There are certain things that I think we take advantage of and probably don't respect in its time, but it's some of the small things. And echoing some of what my friends and council members have said about his stepping into this role and being the perfect person at the time to lead Victoria, and he did a beautiful job. And I think you can see by council up here, and we don't always have to agree, but we certainly respect each other and respect each other's comments. He helped lead that, sitting in that chair, and he did a beautiful job. He was truly a Renaissance man. As much as talking about city politics and direction and economic development and everything that he had a passion for, and really all of us as well, I'll miss sitting there and just simply talking music with him. There are so many things that he had passions for that outside of city things that are made Raleigh who he was and really special to so many people. So I'll miss those seemingly silly conversations, but were very valuable. I miss my friend, but thank you for having him and allowing to share him with us and the entire city. So I'm a better person for knowing Raleigh, and I thank you.
I think we need to give him applause.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Next, we have a proclamation for National Library Workers' Day. And Dana is going to come up with her staff. Dana, do you want to introduce your staff first, or you want us to read the proclamation?
I can go ahead and do an introduction first.
Okay.
Great. Sure, everyone came in. It's a little bit of a traffic control
They're
issue
used to
back there.
being very quiet.
You should have heard them back there. I could hear them in the lobby. They were being very noisy. I had to shush them. So tonight I have librarians with me from all across Victoria. We have so many different types of libraries in Victoria, and I wanted to recognize just the breadth and depth of library services that we have here in Victoria, and recognize each one of these people and the type of library they represent. And so I'm going to go through the names. Let's see. Oh, okay. See what direction I'm going. So I'm going to start to my right, and it's Karen Locker with UHV Library. She's the director. And then next to her is Dara Pena, who is the Hopkins Elementary School librarian. And then Jennifer Stewart, who is the Victoria College director. And then right behind me is Mary Jane Callahan. She is the librarian from Trinity Episcopal. And Sister Lillian Yanda, and she is with Nazareth Academy. And then I have Katrine Viella, who is one of my staff. She's my technical services manager, and she was one of the people who helped me organize this event and all the events we are doing this week at Victoria Public Library to celebrate our staff. And then we have Sherry Ranashek, and she is the West High School librarian. And then at the end is my assistant director, Jessica Berger, who's also a big support and big help to me at VPL. And I also just wanted to recognize all the staff at VPLs. Couldn't bring them all in today, but we are recognizing them this week for their service, and it is National Library Week, so having a little celebration with them also.
Thank you for bringing all different librarians to us. That was a really good thought. Makes me expand my thought process. Thank you.
And do you?
Okay, April's going to read the proclamation so everybody can come up, or however you want to do it.
Whereas libraries provide invaluable services to the community regardless of age, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background through hard work and dedication, and whereas library staff serve people of all ages and abilities and deliver children and adult programs that enrich and recognize our diverse communities, develop new services that enhance literacy, and preserve our history and support learning of all ages, and whereas library staff work collectively to provide access to thousands of items each year and bring Victorians and surrounding counties a world of knowledge in person and online. Whereas cities, libraries, library workers, and library supporters across America are celebrating National Library Workers' Day, sponsored by the American Literacy Association Allied Professional Association. Now, therefore, I, Josephine E. Solis, by the authority vested in me as the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Victoria, designate April 6th, 2021 as National Library Workers' Day in Victoria, Texas.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, items from council. Are there any items not otherwise listed in the agenda for which members of the city council would like to request specific factual information, a recitation of existing policy, or a placement on further agenda? I know Mark had asked, and so does Ricky, and I don't know if anybody else, and I have one too, but we'll ask Mark to start this conversation.
Well, I don't have anything to put on a future agenda, but I would like to thank Jan for her help with the contracts, and she knows what I'm talking about. I'd like to thank the beautification department. The flowers and the landscaping by the loop are wonderful, and it makes me proud to live in Victoria. And at our last meeting, it was discussed that we have a new how can I put it, a new way to finance our CIP. And it's a much more effective and efficient use of tax dollars. And I applaud Gilbert, his staff, and Jesus for freeing up Gilbert to be creative and help Victoria use our tax dollars more wisely. I really appreciate it, and thank you. And there's one other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's been pointed to me that when we had the freeze, And excuse me, I've already been said, but Public Works and the Water Department need a shout out. I mean, they are essential to Victoria, and they need to realize that they're essential to Victoria. I think oftentimes there are two departments that get placed in the essential category, but when you need water, you need the water department. And I thank them for all their hard work. That's it from me. I really don't have anything to put on the agenda.
Ricky?
I just saw on the agenda earlier that under City Manager's report, the second item is a presentation concerning Highway 59. I have several comments I'd like to make at that time. So I'd like to make sure I'm given the opportunity to speak about the business owners' complaints and the uncertainty on these business owners of and the confusion going on this 59 project, the median project by TxDOT.
I was also asked last night by a client, when you're going down on Navarro, the mediums, you really can't see them sometimes, especially because they were from out of town. So they were asking if there's any way that we could either paint the curbs or something so that they don't bump into the curbs. One, because we're not used to them first. And I don't know whether you can paint them. I don't know what you can do to brighten them up so people can see them, because I have trouble seeing sometimes at night too, not sometimes, all the time. So I don't know what we could do for those mediums, and I just thought I'd bring it up. Okay,
And we can have that conversation during the city manager's report.
okay,
And then that way it's a more comprehensive conversation with some context on the purpose and the intent and the goals and things of that sort. I think that would be helpful.
okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, now we have citizens' communications. As a reminder, citizens' communications may be done either in person or through video conferencing. We would encourage anyone who has had any recent exposure to the COVID-19 or those who may be in a high-risk population group to make use of the video conferencing option. These instructions are again available at www.victoriatech.gov/talk-to-council. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes in duration and will be received by audio only. There will not be an opportunity to provide any presentation or visual material either in person or via teleconference. Please remember to silence any cell phones, televisions, or other background noise so that we can hear your comments clearly. It is generally the practice of the City Council not to respond to comments made during this time, but city staff will be available to follow up as necessary. I do have a comment card, and it's from Michael Vandero. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael from Victoria Oaks. My condolences to the two state troopers that lost their lives, in the line of duty. One of the troopers, he was just trying to help a disabled car. He wasn't even going to give him a traffic ticket, And I had a state trooper that saved my life. I fell asleep behind the wheel at about 55 miles per hour coming from work, and my window was rolled down, and he rolled his window down and yelled at me on the bullhorn to wake me up and stuff. I don't know what would have happened if it wasn't for him. And just wanted to thank code enforcement for picking up all the trash. The people in the trailer park won't do it on their own, and they have to write them up and document everything. And just wanted to thank law enforcement. They made another arrest with someone in the trailer park and in Goliad, and then he got transferred to Victoria, and he just got out of jail, so it's probably going to be ruckus again. I use VineLink, and that keeps track of when people get out of jail. You probably live on the north side, so you don't have to worry, but I'm on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. I'm on the south side, And I think law enforcement should get extra money just for working the trailer park, you know? It's just that bad. And anyway, we have two people on felony probation. They keep violating the rules and the laws and stuff, and they're just criminals, you know, they're not going to change, and just the way it is. So, you know, they got their hands full. And one of the guys on felony probation had a DWI hearing. It got transferred, and the other guy, he got arrested for unauthorized use of a car and tampering with evidence, and the DA hasn't filed charges. Sometimes it takes like a year. So after someone, you know, gets charged with something, it can, you know, after they get arrested, it could take 2 years before they actually go to jail and stuff with the COVID-19. But want to appreciate everyone involved. And Mr. McCoy, he don't remember my name. He just called me the dog man because I was always griping about dog problems in the trailer park. And he just said, hey, dog man. I was saying, how's those dogs doing? I said, they're still bad. He says, you want me to come in the park and see if I could run them off or call the pound or call the commissioner's court or anything? But thanks and have a good day. Appreciate it.
Michael. If you wish to speak through video conferences, please use the raise your hand button now. Oh, somebody, okay, you can come on up. Be sure to give us your name and your address.
Ann Rickers,
Okay.
101 Hampton Court. I brought a picture and you said you can't have any pictures.
Oh,
But, well, I wanted to say something about the crosswalks on Navarro and Rio Grande. Maybe to make them, make some where the traffic's fast, more visible, lots of white paint, island, maybe a little railing, maybe even a palm tree to get their attention. Can I give this drawing to anybody?
you have to give it to the police officer.
Okay. And then I heard that y'all were getting some money from the federal government. And I thought maybe y'all could be your own PPA power where you put solar on some of your city buildings and then have your own power agreement with yourself and pay yourself back. So this is an investment that will come back to you where you can, and you could probably create, can I take this down? Yes? Okay, thanks. Where you could invest in not only the city public buildings, but other public buildings and make money back on it, and it could be a growing thing. I did a prospectus on maybe the money that VISD has. They have about 9 million something. They've over-collected on the bond. But I realized that if they invested that money on public buildings, that in 10 years, they could start getting like 19 million back, plus they could continue to invest on public buildings. So I figured by the time the year 2043 came around, they could have put on 2,967 buildings solar, plus they could have collected just free money they could spend, like 504 million. So I think it's worth looking into. Maybe my numbers aren't exactly right, but I'm pretty good with numbers, come from a family of bankers, so I think it's worth looking at. And that's basically what I was going to talk to about, those two things. So y'all can keep the picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. James, do we have anybody else that wants to talk to us, video conference? Oh, we have
Oh,
one more
Mr.
person.
Ward.
Okay, come on up, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. I've communicated with some of y'all individually. about the Business 59 project that TxDOT is proposing. I have particular concerns about the area between Navarro and Laurent along Rio Grande. Currently on Navarro, there is no pedestrian crosswalk or anything of that kind. There is a crosswalk at Laurent, but that area of Laurent and Rio Grande is a high-traffic area, which concerns me that it's not a good area for either pedestrians or cyclists or even really cars. But I've met with TxDOT on the ground, and as I understand it, they've proposed a median break at the at Rio Grande and Goldman, which is about a midpoint between Navarro and Laurent, about equidistant from Laurent as Azalea is, Goldman is. And I would just ask y'all to consider asking them to do a study to determine maybe we could look at having that as a crosswalked intersection in order to implement our 2035 plan, because right now those two neighborhoods have long been disconnected. They're both historic neighborhoods. They're have always traditionally been lower to moderate income neighborhoods, but there's really no good way to cross right now. And when I noticed Navarro's not even a crosswalked intersection, it even brought more attention to me that we need something in between those two areas for those neighborhoods and for those citizens and for the businesses, because when the traffic is redirected, it's going to impact a lot of people, including DeTar Hospital. So I hope y'all look at that seriously because I think it's going to be a long-term concern. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Items with public hearing. April will read the items with public hearing.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending Section 14-52B of the City Code related to itinerant vendor permits.
I just want to speak briefly to this. Currently, for the Market on Main event, under our current ordinance, I am to apply for the itinerant vendor permit and apply all of the rules and regs that go with it to all my vendors. And so what I'm proposing is that my Main Street events would be included as the exempt organizations along with Parks and Recreation and Boot Fest. So that's essentially what we're proposing here.
Okay, are there any more comments from the city council audience?
Be a public
Anybody?
hearing.
A public hearing? Yeah, it's open to a public hearing. Anybody in the audience have anything to say on item C1? Seeing none, can we discuss it? Anybody need to discuss it, or?
Sure, so what, Ms. Williams, what is the, by having the itinerant vendor's permit right now, what is the problem with it?
Well, currently I would have to background check all of my vendors that I recruit. And there is a monetary, I think it's $80, right? April?
$80 a person.
$80 per person.
And it's an individual permit.
And I'd have to file the permit individually for each participant or each vendor.
So why are those vendors allowed to do it while others need to go through the same process? Why is it okay for the government to hire them? And this may not be for you to answer.
Maybe.
So why is it okay that the government can hire them without doing the proper checks and everything, but if it's just an itinerant vendor coming to town, they have to be background checked? How do we ensure that we get the same level of vendor that the permit sets up?
I do have my own set of rules and regulations that they have to adhere to.
Yeah, but I think the intent with the original, and I'm just guessing here, but I assume the intent was to try and, I hate to use the word incentivize or promote, but maybe facilitate's the better word, facilitate the activation of De Leon Plaza. And you may recall that the Parks Department used to be the department that was more directly involved with De Leon Plaza. And so recall that the farmer's market, for example, used to take place in De Leon Plaza, which is a conversation for another day about the references to farmer's market in our code and some adjustments that might need to come from that. But it was all geared towards facilitating farmer's market and other like similar events to take place in De Leon Plaza, which was run by the parks. Now with Main Street being a city department, we're simply saying we still want to help facilitate the activation of downtown, except now it's through Main Street except parks, and so that's why the change. So I think that was a big part of it.
So in this ordinance, I don't see that it's just for De Leon Plaza.
Correct, but it was specific to parks. But that's why that's my guess that that's what caused it to be that way, because again, parks was centered around De Leon Plaza. Obviously, parks is involved with other events. But I think part of the reason why we should continue to have, and I don't know if this is where the conversation is headed, but I think we should continue to have that permit where other folks have to register for it, because some of the door-to-door solicitation also applies to that. And so we want to make sure that we have that process in place and that permit in place for some of the door-to-door. And so I don't know, again, I don't know if that's where the conversation was going, but I do think we should keep it. And a way for the city to help facilitate events is by us having not save the expense part of it, right? We can certainly just go through the process, but it would mean the city paying itself for a permit is what it would look like if there wasn't an exception, if you will. April's nodding her head as a no, so she's about to correct me.
Those permits are issued individually, so even if two people are working a booth, each individual person has to be background checked and pay the $80 permit fee. So it wouldn't be the city applying for the permit, it would be each individual person that's there soliciting. And it is true that this is the same permit that we issue to door-to-door salesmen as well. So there's very few exceptions written into this section of code, being some of them being the location where the sale is taking place, whether it's De Leon Plaza, at the Lee Tracy, the special events area, the park. And then there's also some exceptions for if the individual is under 18 years of age, and if it's an event or a booth that's sponsored by a 501c3 and a local organization.
Are we trying to get at the fee and not paying the fee from one side to the other? Or are we trying to get rid of all of the requirements? Because I'm wondering, Vela Farms has classic cars once a month, and I'm imagining that they have to follow these rules. So I'm just wondering, whether we are throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if we're just trying to get to the fee.
The cars have been, they're not selling anything.
Okay.
But in the past too, going from my experience with Parks and Recreation, we had several other locations, and those are available to anybody who wants to have their own market event. I purposely and strategically placed my market event closer to all the restaurants and the other retail that's going downtown in a parking lot behind the Box Coffee to try to draw more traffic in that area. Whereas right now, De Leon Plaza is a little vacant across the street, and we're working towards getting it filled. But that's kind of where I stand today on that event.
It's still for me that I don't see why, if the government's running the event, then the rules don't apply. But if it's a private citizen putting on an event, even if it's in De Leon Plaza, the rules still apply.
So my current rules and regulations are very much in line with what is in the ordinance, as far as I don't allow firearms, I don't allow knives, I don't allow fireworks, I don't allow selling of any animals. It's all handmade, homegrown items. And they have to go through me in order to get approved to be a vendor. Right now, I only charge them $20, and it's for a 10 by 10 space, and I'd hate for them to be out about $100 and then maybe not make that money back.
But if a private company is holding that same type of market event in downtown, they would be required to pay $100.
So
That's what I'm not,
I want to make a clarifying point, because I think April's about to make it too, if I don't, is that the ordinance actually allows for these places that April verbalized, De Leon Plaza, and some facilities at the parks that don't require it for anybody. And so currently, a private organization or citizen could, book De Leon Plaza to have a market event, and they don't have to go through the process. That's the way that it's currently.
we don't have an Exhibit A in this documentation that's referenced in the ordinance. The amended ordinance or Victoria City Code, we don't have a copy of, so I can't
Okay.
tell you exactly what, I can't read along with you or understand how it currently reads in the ordinance.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
Okay.
maybe that's where I'm struggling with it and not being able to read the full context of what the city
Right.
code is.
Yeah, no,
That we're
understood.
trying
That's a
to
valid
amend
point.
with this C1.
Well, there is no brush to this either. So we can certainly come back and have a more educational approach to it and have a more robust conversation about it if you like.
That would be my preference, but if all the rest of y'all want to approve
I
it,
personally
I'm
think
okay
it's a
with it.
great idea. I think we're onto something, and I'm not sure I see the downside on it. I think it's a positive thing for Victoria since we're promoting the growth of downtown in different areas.
Based
Mr.
on what
Bucknight,
you,
if I can interject here, I want to apologize for that exhibit not being attached. I did not realize it was not attached to that. That's a miscommunication between Main Street and myself, and we will get you that exhibit when this item comes back for the next reading. I agree, you absolutely should see the text of the ordinance you're voting on before you vote on it.
Thank you.
just based on what you just said, though, that I think clarified it for me, and I'm more comfortable with it, and we are going to have 2 readings on this, and so we might consider that and consider going on with the vote and then having the full text for the next reading.
Well, if that's okay, he gets a call for the question. All those in favor?
Do we have a motion?
Huh?
We
Oh,
don't
we
have a
don't have a motion,
All right.
sorry.
I move that we adopt this item.
I second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we're going to go into the consent agenda. April will read us the consent agenda, please.
Item D1 is the adoption of the minutes of the March, I apologize, I don't have the date. The March 16th meeting. Item D2 is a resolution appointing the Health Authority for the City of Victoria. Item D3 is a resolution appointing a dentist to the Board of Health. Item D4 is a resolution approving the renewal of the city manager and city attorney employment contracts. And item D5 is an ordinance on second and third reading amending the FY 2020 and 2021 City of Victoria budget to repair, remodel, and harden Fire Station Number 1, to lease golf carts and a range utility vehicle, and for the city's contribution to the TxDOT Green Ribbon Project in the cumulative amount of $1,507,852.72.
I move we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been made a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
May I
Oh.
interject one thing? I want to thank Dr. McNeil for asking to be reappointed.
Oh, that's
I would not have expected that after this last year dealing with
Yes.
COVID, but I want him to know that I really do appreciate him.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Being
too.
reappointed.
Yes, yes.
I second that, absolutely.
And we'd like to also welcome Grant to be the dentist and,
Ms. Solis?
oh,
Good
hey,
evening.
David.
Yeah, if I may, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Dr. McNeil did want to pass along his appreciation for allowing him to serve once again, and it's been an honor. And he does look forward to continuing that. And he is a little crazy, I think, for taking that on again, but he's been a huge asset for us, as y'all know, so we appreciate everything he's done for us in the community, for sure.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Item E1 was taken off the agenda. So we go to item E2.
Item E2 is a resolution approving an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT for improvements to the median on North Navarro Street or Business 77 median project in the amount of $133,149.
Briefly, what this is the median project included luminaires in the middle of the median all the way up. And as they were constructing and putting in the luminaires, they found out that the median was too narrow to place those luminaires inside the median. And for continuity purposes, we discussed it with TxDOT, and they said that if you go into this advanced funding agreement, they would ultimately replace the median, make it a little bit wider. The lanes will be about 6 inches wider on either side to be able to place those luminaires in there. And that provides continuity basically from airline all the way up to the loop. And that's the main purpose of this AFA, Advanced Funding Agreement.
Move we approve item E2.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I think that's great. Thank you for seeing that and getting that continuity.
And can we expect you to do the same thing for Rio Grande? Okay. On item E3. Oh, okay, we were gonna, let me just ask the council. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items are going to be the legislative resolutions. Do y'all want them read together, but we will vote on them individually? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Or would y'all want to be read each one individually, take a vote, and then go to the next one?
You could also read them all and then approve them as a slate.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
I like that.
Okay, so we'll have them read them all, and then we'll vote on them.
Yeah,
Okay,
if we want to pull one out, I think we can
okay,
pull one out.
And if
That'd
we've
be
got questions, I'm sure we're going to stop Thomas as he goes along.
okay. Thomas, you got the floor.
And do you
for
want
this.
questions at the end or the beginning?
April, are you going to read them all?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Item E3 is a resolution supporting destination sourcing of sales tax and opposing place of business sourcing of sales tax. Item E4 is a resolution in support of Senate Bill 1067, which provides that the prohibition of the consumption of alcoholic beverages in a public place during certain hours applies to all public places regardless of whether it is a licensed or permitted premises. Item E5 is a resolution supporting House Bill 1483, which would allow the city to hold an election to impose a 1 cent per gallon tax on the sale of gasoline to be used for street construction, maintenance, and policing. Item E6 is a resolution opposing House Bill 1869, which would limit the city's ability to address infrastructure needs. Item E7 is a resolution opposing House Bill 753, which would prohibit the city from charging more than 2% franchise fee on solid waste management services. Item E8 is a resolution opposing House Bill 1513, which would prohibit Texas peace officers from using less than lethal projectiles in high-risk crowd situations. And item E9 is a resolution opposing House Bill 3784, which would eliminate enforcement mechanisms related to emergency management plans.
Before I address your question, Mr. Balknight, first let me thank the committee that's been working very hard on legislative issues over the last several weeks. Since the last time that I spoke with you, we have reached the end of bill filing at the legislature. And that means, as with any due date, a lot of things got filed right before the due date. And so it was a lot of work to go through all of those bills. I thank my staff for their tireless efforts in reviewing those bill summaries. I thank TML for creating those bill summaries. I thank the committee for working through that to establish the city's position on the various relevant bills. It's been a long process. We are finally moving into the next phase of that process. So this is a long presentation tonight. I will try to go quickly through it. It's against my nature to, speak shortly, but I will do my best. And to your question, Mr. Balknight, why don't we take questions as we go through each individual bill? If you have a question about any of the bills that I'm summarizing or about the position that we're recommending the city take on any of those bills, let's take up those questions as we're discussing the bill. And if it reaches a point where you want to pull one of those bills off of the slate of that we're going to vote on together later, just say so. And why don't we take that item up for vote at that time? And then whatever's left over when we get to the end, we can vote on collectively. If that process will work for everybody, I'm seeing heads nodding around the table, that's the way I'll go through these then. All right. Item E3 is a resolution that supports destination sourcing of sales tax. I spoke on this bill, or one of these bills, today at the Capitol in Austin and got to hear both sides of the story. In Texas, the collection of sales tax is split among two different systems. Some items are taxed at the origin of the product where the business makes the sale, and other items are taxed at the destination where the consumer actually takes delivery of the product. That's most evident in internet sales, where if you order something online, frequently that product will be sales tax sourced at the location of the distribution center. And so if you order something from Bed Bath & Beyond, for example, they have a distribution center in Coppell. Coppell, Texas collects the sales tax on that and uses it to fix their streets and roads, not ours. So this bill, or this collection of bills, seeks to implement a rule change that the comptroller wants to put into the rules. The comptroller wants destination sourcing on all sales tax throughout the state. But he delayed the effective date of the rule that he wrote, 3.334, until after this legislative session to give the legislature a chance to weigh in. There have been several bills filed on this subject. House Bill 2410, House Bill 4072, which I testified on today, would codify the comptroller's change and implement destination sourcing. House Bill 1038 and others would codify the existing rule prior to the amendment to Rule 3.334 and would allow tax to be sourced at the place of business. Here in the city of Victoria, it would be better for us to use destination sourcing because we don't have one of those large distribution centers. And so the position we're recommending that the city take on these bills is to support House Bill 2410, House Bill 4072, and other bills that would result in destination sourcing of sales tax, and to oppose Senate Bill 1038 and other bills that would implement place of business or origin sourcing of that sales tax. Are there any questions about this? That's item E3.
And if none of these bills make it through, then the comptroller's order goes into effect in October.
That's correct. If no bills pass, then the comptroller is going to switch the state over to destination sourcing for internet sales specifically. Part of the dialogue today at the Capitol was that House Bill 4072 that we were actually debating applies to more than just internet sales. So the issue is actually broader than just what I've laid out here. For example, a concrete batch plant in Coppell sells concrete that gets installed on a project in a neighboring community. That could potentially be affected by this bill as well. But as the speaker, the committee chair said today, it's the place where people are buying the product that is generating that sales tax. And that sales tax, in my opinion, should be used to benefit the community where it's being generated, not some other community elsewhere in the state.
That was the chairman?
That was the chair of that committee, and I'm drawing a blank on his name.
No, that's a good comment from him.
Yes, I really thought it was.
Thomas, how does that affect interstate sales?
Interstate sales have already been handled by a Supreme Court decision. I believe it's called the Wayfair decision, that already says that sales tax need to be generated at the state where now I'm going to have to double check that. I know it's been handled by a Supreme Court decision, but I'm going to have to go back and refer back to that in order to determine whether that's destination or origin. Great question. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item E4 then. Item E4 deals with Senate Bill 1067 primarily, which clarifies the definition of a public place related to alcohol consumption. Currently, the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Code says that you cannot consume alcohol in a public place after 2 a.m., but it does not provide a definition of a public place. What it says is a licensed facility, that's a place that has an alcohol permit. A licensed facility is a public place, but it doesn't say what other places might be public places or whether there are some places that might not be public places. And so this bill seeks to clarify that definition. We believe that is a good change in our community. There are certain businesses that are currently operating as a bring your own beer nightclub, for example. Because they're open to the public and they charge a cover to get in the door, I would consider that to be a public place. However, it is arguably not within the definition of public place for the consumption of alcohol, and therefore those types of businesses continue to operate after 2 a.m. We have some places that don't even open their doors until 11 o'clock. And some of those places have been problems with criminal activity. You have people wandering out of those establishments. We have incidents of drunk driving. You have neighborhood problems. You have parking overflow problems. We've had reports of people's trash cans being dumped over. There are all sorts of problems that go along with those types of business. We're seeking support for this bill because we think it would make it clear that that type of business that is a bring your own beer nightclub would have to comply with the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission and shut down their activity at 2 a.m. along with all the other bars. Are there any questions about that bill? All right, moving on. Item E5 on your agenda is a local fuel tax election. If this bill passes, it will allow City Council the option of calling an election to ask citizens to voluntarily tax themselves 1 penny per gallon of within our city. So this is an opportunity to allow the community to put their wallet where their mouths have been with regards to their discussion about the quality of city streets. We know that city streets are an issue for our constituents, your constituents, and if they would like the opportunity to have an election to tax themselves in order to generate revenue for that, this bill would make that possible. Importantly, though, the bill does not automatically create a tax. It only allows us to call an election so that the citizens could choose. For that reason, I think it's a good bill. It is not implementing a new tax. It is merely allowing for local control.
Yeah, that part is what swayed me on this when we were talking in the committee. It's just a tool that we can have in a toolbox. Doesn't mean we ever have to even act upon it or take it to the voters to see if that's something they want. But it'd be nice to have at least another tool in the toolbox to provide some additional funding if we wanted to move in that direction.
I like a little bit more local control.
Yeah.
I agree.
It also lets us collect a little bit of tax from people that are passing through.
Continue that tourism.
Lots of
promotion.
other states or cities do it, so.
Yes, ma'am. All right, item E6 is a bill that we're going to recommend opposing. And this is a bit of a complicated bill that has a very simple origin. All that the bill does is add that bold underlined phrase into the definition of a debt. It now says that a debt is only a bond, warrant, et cetera, that has been approved at an election and is paid by property taxes. The impact that bill has is on our tax rate. That definition of debt is used in the calculation of M&O versus debt service tax rate. When we get around this summer to voting on what is the tax rate for our community, you all know that you're voting on the maintenance and operations side of that tax rate. And that, due to Senate Bill 2 in the last session, you cannot increase your maintenance and operation tax rate more than 3.5% without going to the voters. On the other side of the tax rate is the debt service tax rate, which statutorily you must set at a rate necessary to pay your debts. You don't have the choice in what your debt service tax rate is. The only choice you get is whether or not you sell bonds. This changes the definition of what types of debt get included on the debt service side of the tax rate.
Yes.
If this bill were to pass, then any item, any type of bond that we might choose to sell that does not go to the voters. I'm sorry, Councilman Lofgren, are you asking a question?
He's speaking on the phone. I just muted him.
I'm sorry, that wasn't a question. James just told me that was not a question. So if you don't take your bonds to the voters, then it must be, according to this definition, included on the maintenance and operations side of your tax rate. And since you can't increase your maintenance and operations budget to cover that new debt, if it exceeds 3.5% increase without going to the voters, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. This is a definition that would essentially eliminate our ability to continue to service debt the way that we have done in the past. So certificates of obligation, revenue bonds, the types of bonds that Victoria has traditionally sold would no longer be able to be serviced under the debt service side. They would have to be serviced by M&O. Gilbert, you want to clarify something?
Yes, thank you. Not the revenue bonds.
Not revenue bonds. You want to real quickly give us an education on which types of bonds?
We're strictly talking about any other bonds that service through the M&O side of the general fund, basically. Revenue bonds is utility debts pledged by producing operation revenue like your water, sewer, et cetera, et cetera. This is directly impacting your whole tax calculation. That's what it is. So I just want to clarify, it's just not the revenue bonds.
I talked with him before the meeting and told him I was probably going to get that wrong and asked him to please interrupt me if I did. All right. So we really, because of the fact that we have a lot of debt capacity coming online in the future, we really want the definition to stay the way that it currently is so that we can continue to set our tax rate the way that we have. There's been years of financial planning done by this council to try to make sure that we would be able to take advantage of that debt capacity going forward. And if this were to pass, it might limit our ability to access that. That's why I have phrased this as it would limit our ability to serve our infrastructure needs because we plan on servicing that infrastructure through selling of bonds.
Can I make one other comment on E5 that I see as just a shortcoming of this, any tax on gallons of gasoline, is it never addresses EVs, electric vehicles, that use the same roads. So I hope in the future to see some type of replacement, I guess, or something, but what are we gonna do when there's a bunch more electric vehicles on the road and most of the roads are getting done by gas tax for the federal government?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. In the research that I did in preparation for discussing this bill, it became obvious that the statewide gas tax hasn't been increased in years and arguably has fallen behind. The more efficient our vehicles are, the more wear and tear we're creating per gallon of gas. And so even without electric vehicles, the fuel tax is falling behind. If you add electric vehicles into that, it's going to fall even further behind. And I think this is the state legislature's way of giving us the opportunity to help get caught back up on that. All right. Moving back forward to the debt financing that we were just discussing, I know that was a very complicated discussion. Are there any questions on that debt financing bill? All right, moving on then to E7, franchise fee caps. This is House Bill 753. And what it says is that our franchise for solid waste management services cannot be more than 2%. Franchise fees, as you all know, for the benefit of the public who might not be as familiar with them, franchise fees are established by contract with businesses, private entities, that want to use public infrastructure for their business. Think, for example, of Waste Management. We have a franchise agreement with them. They're using city public streets, public infrastructure, to collect solid waste and deliver it out to the landfill. In doing so, they're using a publicly owned resource, our streets, and causing wear and tear to those streets. We charge them for that, and it's called a franchise fee. That franchise fee in our waste management contract right now is 15%. If this bill were to pass, we could not charge more than 2% for that type of service. That would eliminate approximately $1.8 million of revenue from the city of Victoria between waste management and other solid waste providers. That is a dollar figure that equates to about 4% of the general fund. Again, note, 4% is more than 3.5%. We're statutorily prohibited from increasing our maintenance and operations tax more than 3.5% to make up for that loss without going to the voters for that. So again, it's a rock and a hard place issue. We're kind of trapped. And so we're recommending that council oppose House Bill 753 and allow us to continue to have arm's length negotiations to establish those franchise fees.
Was there a particular reason that who brought this up? Did they give?
My understanding is this is a bill that gets filed frequently in multiple legislative sessions and has not passed in the past. This year, it seems to be gaining some legs, and that's what's got us a little bit more worried about it than in the past.
And one of the briefs that I read talked about how, I guess part of the argument is it adds an expense, to the private business, and so if we really want to have, more competition, things of that sort, that this should be lowered. Because obviously that expense is passed on to the consumer.
Right? Another, the second bullet point up there about what this bill does is it prohibits us from having a single provider like we currently have. Our franchise agreement right now is an exclusive agreement. We do that in part because it's part of that negotiated agreement, and this would prohibit that. So there are layers to this, but I think it generally speaking, the loss of revenue for our community would be damaging. Okay. Item E8, we're almost done. This is a complicated bill, and I apologize that this may come across as more political in the national sense of politics than we typically deal with in this council chamber. But what this bill would do is prohibit the use of less lethal projectiles to control activity or movement of a gathering of people. This is essentially crowd control or riot control. And a less lethal projectile, you need to understand, is a specific type of bullet that is used by police officers. They're sometimes referred to as sandbag rounds or rubber bullets, or some of those words are very particular. Some of those are just common vernacular. This specifically refers to less lethal projectiles, and my recollection is it defines which ones they are. The bill says that police officers cannot use them for crowd control. The reason that's a problem is because, A, if you don't have the less lethal projectiles in your arsenal to use at that moment, then an officer on the street is going to have to choose between an even less effective means of controlling the situation, such as perhaps a taser, or a more lethal response. It's taking out the middle ground and forcing a Hobson's dilemma where you're forced to decide between two things that you don't want or won't work. All right? And so this is not a good bill. I understand where it's coming from. I understand the incidents of the last calendar year that have caused bills like this to come to the legislature, but it's not an effective bill. Not to mention the fact that it lacks a definition of what a gathering of people is. Are we specifically talking about riot control, or is this a broader definition? So there are a lot of problems with this bill. We recommend opposing House Bill 1513 to allow our police officers, should the occasion arise, to use all of the resources that they currently have available. The last item is E9 on our agenda.
If you don't mind, I'll just briefly add to that extent that our police department, just like many departments, have their own internal policies that help create a standard of what type of tool to utilize in a situation as it escalates or de-escalates, right? And so I don't want council or the public to think that, there isn't some form of structure or professionalism that goes around how they use all of the resources that they have available to them now. And so I just want to reassure everyone that, yes, even though our position is that we want them to have all resources available, there is a very structured approach to how they choose which ones to utilize in any particular situation. And so I just wanted to throw that out.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. The last item is item E9 on your agenda, enforcement of the emergency management plan. In times of disaster, we have an emergency management plan that has been previously adopted, and it includes in the emergency management plan criminal penalties for violation of the emergency management plan or executive orders that have been issued under that emergency management plan. Think about Hurricane Harvey when it came through, when we needed to impose evacuation orders. Do you want those evacuation orders to be mandatory or discretionary? The difference between mandatory and discretionary is whether or not you enforce it or not. A mandatory evacuation order carries with it criminal penalties if people do not leave. Think about after Hurricane Harvey, if we had needed to impose a curfew to prevent people from looting at night. Thank goodness we did not. You enforce that, through criminal violations for looting and theft, right? But in addition to that, you can have criminal violations just for being out on the streets in violation of the curfew, because that's how you control the movement of people during that disaster. Government Code Section 418-173 is the section that currently gives local jurisdictions and the state the authority to impose those criminal violations in the emergency management plan. This bill simply repeals that section. We would no longer have the authority to have criminal penalties associated with our emergency management plan. And so when the time came to impose a mandatory evacuation order, it would merely be discretionary. All right? And so we believe that in order to actually provide for meaningful orders, enforceable orders, then we need to continue to have that authority. And so we're recommending that the city oppose House Bill 3784.
For clarification, just because we call it an evacuation or a mandatory evacuation, I don't recall that we ever imposed any criminal penalties for people that chose not to evacuate.
It's my understanding that we did not. I don't know of any criminal penalties that were imposed during Hurricane Harvey for violation of those orders.
And I think the only mandatory might have been the low-lying areas.
When we had the mandatory evacuation, we specifically carved out neighborhoods and areas that were
flooding.
In danger of flooding. That's correct. If there are no questions, then Madam Mayor Pro Tem, we're ready for a call on the question of the entire slate.
Okay. We'll call for the question for all of them or together.
Point of order, we need to have a motion
Oh,
first.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, so I move we accept the slate of E3 through E9 as a single vote.
I second.
I second it.
Okay. Now I'll call for the question. Okay, are all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that.
Thank you,
lengthy
Mr. Gooch, and your
explanation.
department
Yes.
for continuing to do that.
Thank you so much. We have the city manager's reports.
Yes, ma'am. So we have 3 reports for you this evening. I'm going to take these a little out of order for the benefit of our special guest that's with us tonight from TxDOT. And so I do want to ask Michael Brzezowski, area engineer, to come up and talk to you a little bit about the US 59, Business US 59 median project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I thank you for allowing me to come and present the roadway improvement project on Business 59T. Start off. My name is Michael Brzozowski, and I am the Victoria Area Engineer at the Victoria Area Office for the Texas Department of Transportation out of the Yoakum District. I oversee construction and maintenance operations in Victoria, Jackson, and Calhoun counties. So tonight, again, as you know, we have an upcoming project, proposing an upcoming project on Business 59. It's going to be very similar to that of our Navarro median project. The Business 59 median project shall extend from Navarro and extend to Loop 463, approximately 3.827 miles long. I want to talk about the project need and the purpose. You know, for some while, and we'll get into the crash data here later on in my presentation, but we've been analyzing the crash data along that corridor, a number of fatal incidents, particularly involving pedestrians along that corridor. You know, as you know, right now from Navarro to all the way to Loop 463, we have a continuous left-hand turn lane. With that, basically, vehicles are able to navigate in that left turn lane and make uncontrolled turning movements into any particular driveway along that route. With the type of businesses we have along Business 59, we see a lot of, obviously, a lot of traffic congestion, and with that, a very high volume of pedestrian traffic. So what's TxDOT trying to do? So the project purpose is to improve safety along the corridor, reduce crashes and fatalities, control turning movements to reduce crashes, increase mobility and reduce congestion, and then make travel safer for pedestrians. So this is some data taken from 2017 to 2020, and looking at all the total reported crashes along Business 59 within that corridor. It's a total of 169 reported crashes, and of these, we had 8 fatal or incapacitating crashes. And of those, looking at the details on the 8 fatal crashes or incapacitating, most of those deal with either an improper left-hand turn movement across traffic, and then the remainder is from pedestrians. So this is some graphs that I'd like to show you, and I know it's a lot of information shown on this sheet. On the left-hand side, it's what we call a heat map, and it's basically plots all of the crashes within really any given boundary, which here we selected basically the Victoria city limits. I don't know why that's, I apologize for it keeping changing, but so it shows the heat map for Business 59, and as you can see what we have highlighted, there's a significant number of crashes along that corridor. The brighter the color as it gets to red and to yellow, that's more crashes in number. The top right pie chart is basically, it's showing all the collisions on Business 59 and showing that as a percentage of the total crashes in the Victoria area. And so since 2014, 2014 was relatively low, and you see the increase, and it's roughly hovering around 20%, and that's the 20% of all Victoria crashes is related to the crashes on Business 59, is what that chart tells us. And then the bottom chart is documenting the severe crashes, and as you can see, since 2014, the trend on that trend line is definitely trending upwards, and our goal with this project would be to, you know, reverse that trend and get it to go more in the downward direction. One thing wanted to look at, and we covered this whenever we discussed the Navarro median project, is, you know, our medians, are they beneficial? You know, do they work? Do they in fact reduce crashes? So this data was analyzed based on the Navarro section north of the loop, from basically Loop 463 to Glasgow. And basically we took the 2 years prior to really 3 years before the median was installed, and then compared it to the 4 years after. You know, looking through 2004 to 2006, crashes were somewhere hovering around the 200 mark. Once the median was installed at the end of 2006, you can see the drastic reduction in number of crashes along that corridor, going down to 134 crashes in 2010. And so overall, out of that, over those 4 years, it's a 36.3% reduction in crashes through that section that's been installed. So with the improvements, as I stated, it's very similar to the Navarro median project with what we're proposing. There is some minor changes that I'd like to discuss, and the main thing is due to our median width. So Navarro, we have basically a 14-foot median, and as you approach an intersection, it reduces down to a 4-foot median at that intersection itself. On this particular, on the Rio Grande median, due to the narrower right-of-way, the median will start at 14 foot and then it'll be reduced to 2 foot as you approach the intersection. There is a couple left turn lanes. That second bullet talks about some left turn lanes to the median at various locations to allow turning movements. What that is really talking about, and we'll get into here in a little bit when I go through the actual layout, is there are some specific locations that particularly we try to locate all or turn all turning movements at a traffic signal. However, there are a couple locations along this corridor that we are proposing a left-hand turn lane at an unsignalized intersection, and I'll explain those reasons here shortly. With this project, we're looking to add some sidewalks at various locations. What we're trying to do with that, right now, there is quite a bit of sidewalks along the corridor, and what we're looking to do is basically fill in the gaps, provide a continuous or provide pedestrians a continuous access to sidewalks, basically from Navarro to, I think it's the end of the curb and gutter, which is somewhere just west of Sam Houston is where the curb and gutter ends. So we'd be looking for continuous access, turn lanes, through that turn lane section with the sidewalks and the curb ramps, so pedestrians can travel parallel to the roadway to the nearest signalized intersection and safely cross at a crossover is what the sidewalks would be involved in. And then also when we say increased illumination throughout the corridor, currently we have illumination in place. It is on the outside. What we are looking to do is to supplement that illumination that's there to provide what's considered continuous illumination, as you've probably seen on Navarro median. We would be supplementing what's out there, providing more illumination, and then upgrading the existing illumination to the new standard of the LED illumination, which is brighter, uses less electricity, etc. So this is an example of the typical section, and if you've driven down Navarro, I'm sure you're familiar with what we have. It's very similar to Rio Grande. Depending on where you're at along the corridor, you either have 2 through lanes or three through lanes, and then as you approach the intersections, the median narrows. As we see here, it shows a 2-foot proposed median at the intersections itself or at the turn lanes for travelers to get into that turn lane to make a left-hand turn. Want to discuss why and when to consider a raised median. So the Transportation Research Board, we pulled some data from them, and basically from that information gathered, a raised median plays a critical role in the operation and safety of roadways, especially on roadways with multiple lanes and with a high level of pedestrian activity, as we see along this area. Also, the high crash locations are where it's desirable to limit left turns to improve safety. So, right now, as I stated previously, if you're in that left turn lane, there's a lot of basically any movement where you're turning left into a driveway, anything like that is considered a conflict point. It could be a potential conflict point. So by adding the median and concentrating those left turn movements at signals or at the turn bays we have proposed, that is basically reducing the number of conflict points along the corridor and thus improving safety and reducing the number of crashes. And then also the aesthetic considerations behind the median itself. Get into a little bit more of the safety benefits behind the medians. So the same research shows that raised medians improve safety by reducing the number of crashes, reducing the severity of crashes when they do happen, and then obviously decreasing the number of fatalities and incapacitating injuries. And so what's the reason for the crash reduction? As I stated, the conflict areas are reduced, left turn lanes are reduced or eliminated, and then increased safety for pedestrians because they are basically encouraged to use the crossovers at the signalized intersections. So now I'd like to go over, kind of just walk you through our proposed layout from starting at Navarro and going to 463. So if we can switch over to the Google Earth image. Alrighty. So here's Victoria. I'm going to zoom in here to Navarro, just kind of walk down the road. So here at Navarro, at Rio Grande, we have the proposed median where if you're traveling eastbound, you'll have the left turning bay to turn south onto Navarro.
Before you move further, I guess, north, can we talk about the intersection with Navarro real quick?
Correct,
Based on
yes.
some of the comments and crosswalks and whatnot.
Yes.
Has there been consideration to incorporate a pedestrian crossing at that intersection? I personally had not realized that there wasn't one until it was brought up. But has that been brought up before?
No, and I honestly didn't realize that either. We do have an overlay project coming up on this route as well, that we will be replacing all the crosswalks through this where there's existing. But that's one thing that I did make a note to visit with the staff in Yoakum about what, the pedestrian elements that we have or will put in place, because I know there's ramps there. So I don't, if we have ramps, I would see us putting crosswalks across from one side to the other. So I will take that back and check on that.
Okay.
Is there more to a crosswalk than the paint and the indication of it?
Well, as
just said
far as
ramps.
the traffic signal itself, there is some pedestrian elements that go on as far as the detectors and, when letting pedestrians know when to cross, when not to cross. I do not know offhand if this current signal, I know most of them along this route do have those elements in place. So that's something I was going to check on as well.
Okay.
While you're going through this, walking down the road, some of our fatalities have been because people don't go to a signalized intersection to do the crosswalk. So just explain in your design what stops people from crossing at any particular point that's not a signalized crosswalk.
Okay. Well, and
because I haven't seen that on Navarro, that there's anything in the design that stops that.
Yeah,
it truly improves pedestrian safety when you have them darting across Navarro.
Yes, sir. No, I understand. And that's one of the things that we have discussed. Right now with the left turn lane, you're basically crossing 7 lanes of traffic. With the median in place, does the median automatically stop pedestrians from crossing anywhere? No, it doesn't. But it does provide some sort of safe haven, if you will, midway across. I know, yes, we encourage all pedestrians to use the safe intersections to cross, but again, I know it doesn't prevent them, and so the median, that's one thing it does is it provides some sort of safe haven for pedestrians.
Well, you don't have cars making left turns, so
Yes,
pedestrians
that's
are not
correct.
Competing, which, we don't want them there, and I'm going to ask another question. As you go through this, I'm starting to get questions about the ability to make U-turns, specifically on Navarro, but it's the same question here.
Mm-hmm.
Are U-turns going to be allowed? Will they be signalized?
Yes. Yeah, at signalized intersections, U-turns it's a legal turning movement.
Now, is there going to be a separate signal for U-turns? So people are concerned about people making U-turns and other people
Right
making
on
turns
red.
at the same time.
Yeah, that right on red. I've been
Yeah.
caught myself having to slam on brakes.
Yeah,
already.
no, and that is a change that whenever you do implement a median, there is more U-turns, and so it does take, it's if you do have a driver at the intersecting location, that both have to be aware. But along just same as Navarro, once we're done with the project, I'm sure we'll coordinate with the city and to any changes that need to be made to the traffic signals themselves, or as far as sequencing and anything like that will be made. if any changes are needed.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but along the lines of U-turns, when I brought it up when the Navarro median was being designed, I asked about, specifically, how are you supposed to turn a 3/4 ton F-250 around in that thing? And you can't. You can already see it where people's grasses are getting hit because the car or the truck will go up on the curb. And I was told at that time, well, you just go down to the next, take your left, go through the residential neighborhood and come back on a Navarro. And I find it hard to believe that that's our answer, is that we're taking thoroughfare traffic, pushing it onto residential streets so that people can make a U-turn and get back and going in the other direction. Is that really the answer?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, sir.
Okay.
That or a smaller car.
No way.
That's why he got the big truck.
A small
I don't have a
electric
problem.
vehicle.
You'll be using a van pretty soon, so.
Bike lanes.
No vans.
No van?
Not allowed.
That's what my son said, and he's driving a van now.
As was stated earlier, so we have Navarro and we have Laurent. After we had a stakeholder meeting, public hearing, we had some comments back from EMS who stated they do use Goldman quite a bit, using Goldman because it's kind of a midpoint access to those neighborhoods. So one thing we're looking to implement, if you can see it right here, it's what we call a traffic worm. It does not allow for through traffic, say on Goldman, to proceed across the road to Goldman, or for traffic on Goldman to say if you're heading north on Goldman to take a left into the eastbound direction. But what it does provide is, say for westbound traffic on Rio Grande, it provides them a turn lane to be able to turn left onto Goldman, and vice versa for eastbound traffic to get into a dedicated turn lane and make a left onto southbound Goldman. So it still provides a left-hand turning movement there, except it just doesn't allow the through movements.
Is it worthwhile to have a signalized light there and crosswalk, or this worm sufficient?
Well, looking at the distances, from my understanding, the distance between Goldman and Navarro, Goldman and Rio Grande, it's a relatively short distance that I don't believe, based on, obviously it would have to go you'd have to do a warrant to see if it was justified. But as far as the length of the turn bays, but what we were trying to achieve, it was around a 600-foot turn bay at each intersection. We were not going to be able to provide that with the signal at that intersection. So that was the thought of doing the traffic worm at that location.
And there's no crosswalk there either.
No crosswalk.
Come, get closer in again. How wide is the median? We're saying we don't necessarily want pedestrian traffic there, but the reality is that there's still a median, not directly on Goldman, but in mid-block where people run anyway. How wide is the median there?
I believe the median there at that location, it's 2 foot wide median.
Yeah, okay.
So really, right now, if Navarro is fixed, from a crosswalk standpoint, we have a crosswalk there, and then there would be Laurent. There would be nothing in between there that would be
Right.
That's correct.
supposedly safe for pedestrians.
Well, there is not a controlled, there will not be, or as it is planned now, there's not a controlled access point for them to cross.
But it's also not jaywalking because there's
not a light.
not a light
Right.
on all those streets.
Do we have any kind of counts on how many people actually do cross there? I mean, they cross everywhere, but is there more people crossing there? I'm not so sure there are.
Yeah, I don't know the data behind that, or if anybody's checked on that data.
This is mainly just access for EMS or fire is the main
Yeah,
reason,
well,
for this cut.
That was one of the concerns that was brought up was EMS, but I mean, anybody will be able to use the cut.
Yeah,
But
certainly.
But that was one of the
But Morning
one of the
Glory got a light on
concerns.
Navarro because the fire department had requested that they
That,
needed access. That wasn't planned to be a cut there.
Yeah, that, and then also, based on when the warrant was done for that traffic signal, what happens if you had the median through there, or to get that warrant, a lot of the a lot of the traffic that's in the restaurants can basically navigate around, I guess, by the health center and come out Morning Glory. And so those proposed traffic counts is what really drove, that signal warrant at that location. Because that's a spot, a destination that a lot of people travel. And so to get out due to those proposed counts is how that was warranted. So moving down as we approach Laurent, the median widens back out, and then obviously we have a turn lane here at Laurent. The next intersection that we're proposing to cut is at, which is Azalea and Stoltz. And as you know, we just let a traffic signal project to come in at this location, and working with the city with cul-de-sacing Stoltz, realigning the HEB driveway. This is one of the hotspot locations for the pedestrian incidents. And so, providing a cut here with the crosswalks and the pedestrian elements here was very vital or critical to safe access for pedestrians to get across the roadway. So that's at that cut.
Thank you for partnering with us.
Mike, can we go back to Laurent?
Yes.
Before you get off Laurent? Is there any designated crosswalks there at Laurent for pedestrians?
I'm trying to remember.
It looks like an old one.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I was going to check, because we have another project outside of the median project. It's an overlay project that will begin here in the next month or two, a nighttime paving job where the roadway is going to completely get resurfaced, and that's one of the things that we have on there is to restripe all the pedestrian crosswalks. So I need to go back on this location as well and confirm. I know we have, as part of the Navarro median project we have ongoing now, we rebuilt a lot of the ramps and the sidewalks along this route as well. And so make sure if we have ramps from one side to the other, that we will be implementing the crosswalks as well.
Because the last time I drove through there was no lines at all.
Okay.
There was no crosswalks at all. So now we don't have a crosswalk at Rio Grande, Goldman, or Laurent.
But it sounds like hopefully by the end of this, we'll end up with legit crosswalks at Navarro and Laurent.
But I think there's signage at Laurent there
Right.
that says walk or don't walk.
There
The
is.
striping
There's-
just may not be
Yeah.
down on the ground anymore, but it is a signalized crosswalk.
It is. The pedestrian elements are at Laurent. I met at this corner with the owner of Wiener Schnitzel, and we looked at the access to his push button for the pedestrians and how we're going to get better access to that. So the elements are there. We're just going to, when we come through with our projects, we'll have that striped for those crosswalks. Okay, we talked about Azalea and Stoltz and what we plan to do there. Next intersection will be Ben Jordan. Again, it's about a 600-foot left-hand turn bay in both directions to access onto Ben Jordan.
Again, the intersections will be signalized.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That location right there is signalized.
Well, I didn't mean it like that, the pedestrian aspect of it.
Yes, this one is already has the pedestrian elements as well.
And for clarification, I assumed the traffic lights would continue
Yes,
to be
ma'am.
there.
Yes, ma'am. Next location want to discuss is Palm Drive, right here by the hospital. So after we had our stakeholder meeting, we had a sit-down meeting with the hospital, and basically went over their renovation plans with them. And from my understanding, based on that meeting, whenever their renovation is done, they're going to have basically two different access points to their ER. They will have an emergency vehicle location, which they will access off of Palm Drive with a direct driveway into the parking lot. And then normal everyday vehicles will be using to access the ER, will use Hospital Drive. So with that proposed traffic count, similar to Morning Glory, we are proposing a traffic signal at Palm at that location. And it will have a turn lane with direct access onto Palm Drive itself. And then with that, at Hospital Drive, we will not have a signal there due to the distance between Ben Wilson and Hospital, but we are planning to have a left-hand turn lane for eastbound traffic for normal vehicles, say traveling to the ER, instead of forcing them to a signal and making a U-turn to get to the ER, having direct access to Hospital Drive to make that turn to access the hospital at that route.
Okay, in that stretch between Ben Jordan and Hospital Drive, you have Sitco that has large tractor trailers,
Yes.
and you have a funeral home, and you have 2 UHV dorms. So all that traffic, when they come out, they're gonna have to turn right. And when we talk about Grace Funeral Home, we talk about funeral processions. When they have a service or something going on, they have a parking lot of anywhere from 50 to 150 vehicles that are there 30 minutes before the service, and then they leave within 30 minutes after the service. Then you have a mile-long funeral procession. So they're all gonna have to turn right and then turn again left on Ben Wilson, then turn again left on Red River and head south, because that's where most of the churches are, and 90% of the cemeteries are in West Victoria. That's gonna create a huge, huge problem for law enforcement, a major problem.
Okay. Yeah, I know, we had some comments from the funeral home, and I don't know the extent of those discussions. I know our district staff had some discussions with them. We did have a sit-down meeting with Sitco and discuss their operations and what we would be doing there. But yes, sir, I do recognize
Right
those.
now,
That's a break in the median though, right?
No, there's no break there.
There's a break right here at Palm. There will be a
Drive.
signal at Palm Drive.
U-turn.
But you can't make a U-turn there with all this, yeah, with the funeral.
Right now, there's construction going on in front of the Dodge place.
But the funeral procession would have law enforcement patrol that might be able to stop traffic to have people
Right.
U-turn. I don't know. I'm just
But-
trying to think out loud.
But right now, there's construction,
Yeah.
and with the construction there's traffic backed up all the way past the intersection of Ben Wilson. So during the day, peak business hours, when funeral processions come out of the funeral home in the mornings between 8 and 12, and again between 1 and 4, you have 100 vehicles coming out of there. That traffic's gonna, because they all have to go to the Ben Wilson now and take a left and go to Red River and take another left and go south on Red River in front of the Victoria College during business hours, where you have thousands of students coming out. I don't think all that's being taken in consideration. That's gonna be a nightmare for law enforcement. I'm telling you, it's gonna be a nightmare. Mark my word. And law enforcement officers on the street now have already confided in me and told me that is going to be a nightmare, and it's gonna be extremely dangerous, and traffic's gonna be stopped in both directions. I don't think that's being taken in consideration, how slow a funeral procession is. So I'd like for you to go back and address it some more and bring us back more information on how that's gonna be fixed.
Yes, sir.
Because it's not gonna work, I can tell you now.
Okay.
While we're looking at that same intersection, I'm kind of curious about the break at Palm, my continuing theme about U-turns, because of all the restaurants on the other side. And so would people be able to make U-turns there to get to the restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
Even though the median doesn't narrow down and there's not a left turn lane?
Oh, well, as far as
Like, how would they get back to McDonald's and get back to Francis Marie's and get back to the dormitories?
Yeah, with the way the median's laid out, it doesn't provide a left-hand turn lane. It will be a signal. That's something that I would have to check at that location
Okay.
and get back to you.
And
If you
another
look at
comment that
all
you
of that.
said, that the reason for these mediums is to not push vehicles into the residential areas. Well, that does it. That does it right there. When you have vehicles coming up that want to go back, they're going to take a left on Palm and go into that residential area, or a right on Palm so they can come back around. I can tell you that that's also going to happen. So that's going to impede ambulance.
Were y'all able to meet with UHV? Can their buses do a U-turn to get to the dorms from the campus?
I don't know if our district staff met with them. I don't know if they commented.
Because they have an internal bus service.
Okay.
And they come down Ben Wilson. Right now, of course, take a right on Rio Grande and take a left into their dorms.
Okay.
And they ferry students over to campus and then also goes all the way over to Airline. So they're making a big loop. But I don't know, without that turn lane there on Palm and queuing up for a U-turn, if they're going to be able to.
Okay. No, I can check. I don't know if anybody had a discussion with them.
Thank you.
So we discussed Palm, Hospital Drive, and the next one will be at Ben Wilson, obviously, where there's a signal.
Is there going to be a walkway at Ben Wilson? A marked,
I think there's
Yes.
one right now.
Ms. Mark? Okay.
Yes.
Lights?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, because that was a part of the highway that we had asked for lighting because of the college. Yes. There's a lot of kids walking there at night to Walgreens and to, Popeyes and everything else there.
Okay.
But the bus, the UHV bus traffic's going to be another big issue because they try to push the students to ride the bus because of the accidents, because of the large intersection. So yes, if that hasn't been addressed, that's poor planning.
Okay.
Next section, next curb opening will be at Sam Houston. Currently, all the pedestrian elements are at that location. Next location is at, I believe that's Teakwood, where the Walmart is. At that traffic signal location, we'll have a break there at that signal. Next location, after our public meeting, this is Jet Maintenance. They requested a meeting, and basically the type of vehicles, they bring in very large construction equipment on oversized lowboy trailers. And similar to what we discussed with Citgo, the reason Citgo works, what they told us, basically all their traffic exits left out of their property onto Ben Jordan and leaves back toward 87 at that direction anyway. So after discussions with them, basically bringing the trucks in on that same route wasn't that big of an issue. Now, Jet Maintenance, as you cross, if you're on 87 and you get on Ben Jordan, I believe you have to cross railroad tracks. And that's the issue with those lowboy trailers. It can't be done. They'll drag, get hung up, et cetera. So that was one of the pushes to provide which would be eastbound left turn lane into just the Jet Maintenance driveway, particularly for their trailers and access to their trailers. Because really this direction, as far as heading in the eastbound direction, is the only way their trailers can make it at this location, because they're just, due to the railroad tracks, there's no way for them to come in from the opposite direction. So
And
that would be,
y'all worked with them on the length of that cut too, because of their
Yes.
long turning radiuses,
yes,
right?
correct. We
Thank
did.
you.
Next cut we have, there's another one that gets, had not issues with design, but made a little design change, was right here at John Stockbauer. This is Fesco. This is another one of the businesses we met with. They bring in, I think, very large cranes for oil field use. And one of the concerns, originally we had this median that extended all the way to John Stockbauer. They were not going to be able to make a left-hand turn out of their business. And what we discussed with them, what we didn't want to happen is they bring big cranes south into Victoria, back to whatever the adjacent roadway was. I believe it's Sam Houston, and then back up to Airline and navigate those large cranes on the city streets. So we worked with the Texas Transportation Institute to come up with a possible solution at this location, where we're looking to actually break in the actual curbed median at this location. And then we're going to remain basically a stripe median beyond that point to John Stockbauer, where Fesco can exit, actually cross that location. We discussed it's close enough to a traffic signal, which you should see a break in traffic to make a safe left-hand turn. It's kind of similar with the businesses across the road at Ingram, I guess the concrete plant. And then obviously the next break will be at this intersection of John Stockbauer. And then between John Stockbauer and Loop 463, there is no proposed cut along this route. The median is basically projected to end at Loop 463, right there at that traffic signal.
It's an old Google Earth, huh?
Looks like it.
I have some questions.
Okay.
And back to, everywhere you have a signal, will there be crosswalks for pedestrians?
Yes, there will be access for pedestrians across at those signalized intersections.
Okay. When you put in the lights and the medians, are you responsible for their repair in the future, or is the city responsible for it?
For accordance with the municipal maintenance agreement, any of the luminaires within the city limits it's similar to the traffic signals. The city is the ones that maintain those luminaires.
What about the median?
Excuse me?
So you're responsible for the road and the median?
Yes, that's correct.
And
We'd be responsible for the roadway and the median itself.
What about the sidewalks?
Sidewalks, I mean, I don't know how much maintenance. I guess since I've been as a AE, we haven't had a whole lot of issues with sidewalk maintenance. I mean, typically it's, once you come in and go through all the ADA process, I mean, there's typically not a whole lot of issues with those.
Okay. You're putting new sidewalks in. Are you putting them all the way down to the loop?
No, what the proposal is, I believe it's I think it's right here at Sam Houston is where, yes, the curb and gutter ends basically right here at that, I guess, a little strip center at Sam Houston and Rio Grande. And that's basically where we're proposing to end the sidewalks, because beyond that, we have open ditch. And so sidewalks become very difficult. I say difficult. It's to maintain ADA access. You'd have a lot of retaining curb, et cetera, to maintain the open ditch through that area. So I believe one of the projects on the MPO that is on the list is basically what we call trunk line this corridor, which is basically put in underground storm sewer, where at that time you can provide pedestrian access, but beyond that point. But I think that's later. It's something on the list on the MPO list.
Yeah, I think we had a fatality there.
Yeah, I believe
Someone
so.
crossing the street to go down to Walmart or something.
Okay.
From Motel 6.
I know people want more pedestrian crossings, but if people, at least the median gives somebody safety for pedestrians. So, because there will be people that don't cross at the crosswalks. No matter what we do.
Correct.
But at least they have an island in the middle.
Michael, are the sidewalks going to be on both sides of the street up until that area, or, because, you got Whataburger over here. I was just asking.
The sidewalks are, the current Navarro median project, we are building sidewalks from Laurent to Ben Wilson on both sides. We'll have continuous sidewalks. And then as a second part of this project, or when the Business 59 median project, we're looking to fill in any gaps that there are that basically provide continuous access on both sides with curb ramps at every corner, and rebuilding any driveways to maintain access across driveways that are currently an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Earlier in this meeting, there was a question about painting the medians or making them appear in.
And I was going to touch on that. So on that Navarro project right now, we're still in the construction phase. And so once they finish this last milestone, we'll finish the milestone between Crestwood and Airline. And then the work that is proposed between where the existing median is between Starbucks and Loop 463, where we're looking, what Ken talked about earlier about getting the proposed illumination, they'll move up to that location, rebuild that median, get that installed. And then as part of that project, we're going to be basically coming in nighttime operations, milling all the pavement out and resurfacing new hot mix. And so after we re-hot mix that road, we will have yellow stripe adjacent to that median, which will be reflective stripe. So you'll be able to, it'll stand out.
Okay, that'll work.
And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but what's the timeline on the Rio Grande project?
Rio Grande is scheduled to let in July of this year, which means construction would tentatively start about 3 to 4 months beyond that.
Okay. And end? How long before y'all get to Sam Houston or the John Stockbauer?
How long till it's done?
Completion.
completion, I think there's roughly 18 months of construction on this project.
Starts in July.
I think it's similar to Navarro, which was 18 months.
The illumination, is it gonna be like Navarro or is it gonna be off to the sides?
So that's the issue with Sam Houston. From what we gather, the right of way, based on our right of way maps, it's anywhere from 2 to 5 foot less than what we have on Navarro, and that 2 to 5 foot is critical with providing illumination down the center. You know, the one we're doing on Navarro, those medians are 4 foot wide. That drill shaft alone is 36 inches. And so you basically, when we're drilling those shafts, it's extending from curb to curb. And then you have the illumination pole element on top of that. And, you know, right now, I think that illumination pole is roughly 24 inches wide. So you got about a 1 foot safety zone on either side. And so with 2 foot less, there is no safety zone. And so, you know, a bumper, turning out, whatever it may be, could cause that illumination pole to come down, and it's coming down on opposing traffic. And so that was one of the factors. But because of the narrow median, you know, we're looking to put the illumination on the outside. However, it is continuous illumination. It's not, you won't have gaps, and it'll essentially look like Navarro does in the essence that it's lit from one end to the other. It's just the illumination will be on the outside.
Yeah, I understand that. It's unfortunate because from an aesthetic standpoint, it is pretty going up Navarro and the lighting is much better, but I understand. Thank you.
Will the poles be on both sides or efficiently enough to be on one side?
I believe due to the pavement width, I think there's going to be poles on both sides. And a lot of them are, I believe, a lot of the current lights I think they're hung off of AEP power poles. And so, you know, wherever there's gaps, we'll be supplementing with new poles and then upgrading everything to the LED lights. It's the brighter white light.
But the new poles you would be putting up to fill the gaps would not be AEP wooden poles?
No, they would be our typical aluminum or metal poles that we use. Except there'd be, you know, the Navarro median poles are only 30 foot because they're casting on both sides, whereas these, depending on what side they're on, they would be the 50-foot poles to cast the light.
Mr. Brzezowski, thank you so much for coming and talking about this. I know it's probably not a comfortable position you're in. As you can tell, it's a very unpopular project in the town. I know the reasons why TxDOT's trying to do it and to improve safety and reduce, you know, automobile wrecks and everything, but thanks for being here. It is very, very unpopular, though.
Yeah. Okay.
I got in an argument with the AutoZone employee this weekend when he was trying to blame the city for Navarro and all the problems and with the median, and I had to finally tell him I was on city council. It's definitely TxDOT, and they have their office in Yoakum if you want to call.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your comments, and like I said, I jotted down some notes, and I do plan to further these discussions. So thank you all as well.
On the other side, I drive that road every day, and I see a lot of pedestrians, and I'm glad we're going to have a respite for them, that they're not going to be conflicting with cars, because I've seen times when cars coming at them and they don't move. So, at least we'll stop the cars from coming at them.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to actually ask Darryl to come up and provide you the next city manager's report, which is his annual report.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely.
Good.
That is your call.
5 minutes. Okay, here comes Thomas. I call the meeting back to order, 7:07.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm here tonight to give my annual report, but before I do that, I want to introduce the newest addition to my department. I'm going to ask Christy to come up. So Christy's my new programs coordinator for the Environmental Services Department. She's got a master's degree in zoology from the University of Oklahoma, a PhD in science education from UT in Austin. She actually worked as an educational director.
Okay, all right, bye.
She actually worked as an educational director for the Colorado River Authority. And we stole her from a garbage company that we do business with, Texas Disposal Systems. They operate our compost facility. And so she will be the new executive director of Keep Victoria Beautiful, as well as taking over all of our education programs. And with her background in solid waste, she'll be helping me with some things on the solid waste side. And so I'm going to introduce Christy.
Can I ask her a question? Is she going to keep doing your videos?
We'll see about that. It's going to be
replacing your
totally up to
video.
her.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not
so you're
replacing
replacing
his
him, right?
videos. No way. I'm smart enough to not replace his videos.
Okay, good.
Well, I want to just thank all of you. I can't wait to meet all of you. I'm honored to work for the city and with Daryl. And there are clearly super creative, wonderful things happening in this town. And I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. I've been in West Texas for a long time, and I'm glad to be back near the coast. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Welcome
Christy,
aboard.
whoa, whoa, whoa. I've got to know, who do you root for between Texas and Oklahoma?
Oh my, you did say that.
Yes, I did.
All right. I grew up in Texas. I was at OU for just a few years, so, hook 'em.
There you go. Thank you. Hot seat, off the hot seat.
Thank you, Christy. So now we're going to get to the meat of things. And I promise I'll take this fairly quickly. Maybe. There it goes. So first of all, I wanted to put a picture of my staff in here. These are the folks that make sure our city looks good, that make sure the trash, the yard waste, the brush, and everything gets picked up every day. We had a tough year. We're having a tough year right now thanks to, I don't want to say it out loud, but the freeze, Dr. Young. I'm using it for all kinds of excuses. But these guys worked all week through the freeze. Not just the solid waste folks picking up trash, but also the community appearance people. I mean, we had our plants covered. We came in, we uncovered them. And as you can see, we had some flower beds that did really well. We uncovered them during the heat of the day so that they could get some sunlight when it was above freezing. But these are the guys that do the work. We get a lot of the credit for it, but these are the guys every day that are out there from 7 o'clock in the morning till sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night, picking those things up. And I think that as being their leader, it's important that I recognize them any chance I get.
I'm impressed. It doesn't look like there are very many of them for as much as they get done.
I think I counted 23
Wow.
for the whole city. Wow. That's awesome. We need to give them a hand of applause.
Sorry, my clicker's dead. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about COVID. This year, we worked through COVID. The solid waste employees worked through COVID. We only had 5 cases in our department. Now, that was as of the time that I put this out. I've got one person out right now that's just being watched. We saw a huge increase in trash, in yard waste, due to people being at home, not being at work, not being at school. It was a burden, and it really affected our overtime and our ability even some days to finish completely. And then if you'll remember, I'm sorry, you got it? Early last year, Mr. Garza and I and Mike talked, and we provided 3 months, right when COVID started, of free pickups of extra brush and large items. People were really cleaning up, getting carried away, putting stuff out. Mr. Garza thought it would be a good idea. This is back when we, did some other things free throughout the city. It was a great success. We picked up a lot of stuff. We're able to clean up a lot of things because when you say free, people really put it out, but it made a big difference in the way the city looked in a lot of places. So keep Victoria beautiful. We're in our second year of getting this revamped. Again, Mr. Garza's words to me were he'd like to see this get going. And we've done a lot. We've kind of taken back over the old Hiller house. That's a picture there of our board members. And we're doing good things. We've got to clean up this Saturday. I'll invite all of you too. We'll be meeting at Target at 7:30 in the morning. We've already got 76 people signed up to work at this cleanup. So it has grown from all city employees of 10, 15, 20 people to now 76. Target and other people are bringing groups. And that's due to Christy and the leadership of KVB, the president, vice president, and that board getting out and getting in front of people. We'll be starting soon with our monthly awards again for beautification with commercial first and then working our way to residential. And so they're doing good work. We're off the ground and we're running. Here's some pictures of our last quarterly pickup that we did. Our goal is to do 2 large-scale events a year and some quarterly small-scale community projects. This could be anything from cleanups to painting houses to doing yard work to just about anything that goes in, because we're not looking at KVB as just a cleanup. We're looking at it as an all-around kind of beautification effort. Wherever we're needed, that's where we want to be. So Southside Cleanup, we took part in the Southside Cleanup. We picked up 118 locations, 573 yards, 38 tons of trash. We did not do that in one morning. We actually moved into that neighborhood about 3 weeks before the actual cleanup and started picking up everything that was out at the street to make sure that we could finish on that day. It was a great event. We picked up a lot of stuff, made a big difference. We drove through there last week. There's a few items here and there. I sent my guys through earlier this week. We got those picked up, but still looks relatively good compared to what it looked like before the original cleanup. Litter Strike Team. This is the team we put in place when we first started the beautification department. This is the guys that if I'm driving or if Mr. Garza or anyone else is driving, calls me and says, hey, there's a mattress here, there's something here, there's something there. This is that team. This is a mixture of community appearance, solid waste. Somebody gets a ticket, we go out, we pick it up. We picked up 306 locations, 262 cubic yards, and 31 tons. That is stuff that was on vacant lots, street corners, could be lots where there's abandoned buildings, VISD property, wherever we see it and it's there for more than a week or so, we go get it. And then the highway cleanups, we do 4 cleanups a year. 2 miles of right of way, if you really do it, it's about 6 miles that we actually clean up by going back and forth. But because our cleanup crews have gotten so big the last few, we've been able to actually take in, instead of just Navarro to Maine, we've been going to including John Stottbauer. And if we continue to grow, we'll just continue working out the loop, and maybe one day we'll be all the way to Main Street. To Business 59. Some of the beautification projects, we completed 6 in 2020. That is not just 2020, that is, just all year, because some of these were done late 2020, actually in this year's 21's budget. We've got 5 that we're working on. In Lavalier Street, there's a kind of a funky triangle in the middle of the street. If you drove by there a month ago, it was just a triangle with grass. Today, it's a triangle with 3 flower beds, and by the end of this month, it will be a triangle with 3 flower beds, a nice park bench, and some limestone, nice little park right there in the middle of the intersection. Air quality, we're finishing up. This year will be our second year of our 2-year grant that we just got. Now, we got this grant even though we're not considered near non-attainment anymore. So it's kind of free money that we wanted to take, but we'll see how this goes in the future. It's kind of going to be up to the governor this year whether or not we keep this, and I have not heard one way or another whether this is something they'll keep going, but we do have 3 monitoring stations out. Right now, our air quality is still reading in the low 60s, which is where we want to be with the standard of 70 currently. Well, that's not mine. I don't know what just happened. There you go. One more, James. Okay, so I talked about the increase on the solid waste side. We pick up about 5,000 customers per day. They work 4 days a week. 30,100 tons of MSW solid waste. That's about 5,000 to 6,000 tons more than we would normally pick up. That's because of the people being at home. We pick up 2,000 customers per day on the recycling, about 1,000 tons. That's actually down a little bit, but we've been getting a lot of contamination in some areas, and we're really picky about what we do because of the cost, trying to keep the cost down to our citizens. So we make sure that the good stuff goes and the bad stuff does not. And so we've got to pick through it.
Again?
There you go. And so we saw increases too on the tons of brush that we pick up, over 1,000 tons there. The biggest issue or the biggest part there was we did do the free pickups, and that made a huge difference for that 3 months. But then we've also seen an increase just to people being at home. You've got more times to go out. And the same goes for yard waste, a large increase on yard waste as well per year due to people being at home. And I can't say that enough because it has made a huge difference in our overall, how our department was able to operate this year. But I think we've done a good job handling it. I think next year, hopefully things will calm back down. We'll get a little closer to normal and, quit having to come by people's houses at 8 o'clock at night when it's already dark. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Gerald, these figures that you have in front of us, they don't include anything from the freeze, do they?
No, ma'am. This was put together actually right after the freeze. I will tell you, and I was speaking with Dr. Young a while ago, most Mondays now, I'm running an extra residential truck every day to pick up yard waste, an extra rear loader, and we're still having trouble finishing. The difference is normally this time of year we're busy, but people aren't trimming. They're completely removing. And so we have seen the Tuesday and Thursday routes start to slack off. The Monday and Friday routes have not. And I think over the next few weeks, we'll start to see that as more stuff gets replaced. But it's so many of the shrubs and small things that are really affecting the yard waste. The brush and bulky has not changed that much because most of the trees in our areas live through frost without any problem. It's the shrubbery, the small plants, those types of things that we're seeing the large increase on.
Okay.
Daryl, when's the last time that we've had an electronic pickup?
You can have one anytime you'd like.
Okay.
So we have our HHW, so you can call the 800 number, set it up, they'll tell you a date, and they'll come pick it up. So they pick up.
Would you say what that is?
I'm sorry. Our household hazardous waste pickup. So it's provided by Waste Management or a waste management company called At Your Door. And so you call an 800 number. They'll tell you when they'll be to your house to pick it up. Do not put it out at the street. They'll send you a package. You put it in the package. You set it by your front door on the day they say they'll be there. You can use this service as many times as you want per year. And they pick up oil, used pesticides, herbicides, paint. About the only thing they don't take is ammunition, and they do not take things like, my mind just went blank, medical waste.
They
So
take fluorescent tubes.
they do
take batteries.
Yes, ma'am, batteries. Now, I will tell you, Batteries, you can take them to Interstate, and Interstate will pay you for most batteries, but if you just want to get rid of them, take them to Interstate, you don't have to wait.
Who's giving up ammo?
You'd be surprised how many calls we get about ammunition, and we just tell them to drop them off at the police department or sheriff's department.
How about commercial for businesses that may have old computers, things of this nature?
So if you're inside the city limits of Victoria and you are a waste management customer, which if you're a commercial business and you are inside the city limits, you can call that same at your door number. And I know that they have worked with several businesses in town to take their stuff. They work with us to take all of ours that we get from IT. They come by my office once a quarter and pick it up for us. Now, there is a separate charge for that because those commercial customers aren't paying for it like our ratepayers are. But it can be done.
Yeah.
Our at-home computer, we can call and they'll pick it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's usually the turnaround's about a week and a half. They come out of New Braunfels, everything goes back to New Braunfels. What's recycled can be recycled, what can't is then taken care of environmentally safe.
We've had community type of things in the past for that, haven't we?
We have. The last one we had was, I believe, in 2003, and it cost us about $230,000. And if you'll remember at that time, and I don't know if y'all will, but I do because I was on that committee, we had the plants were paying for a lot of that. The last one we did was the city of Victoria. Now, when I got to the city in 2008, we did 2 just e-waste days, where we had a company out of Houston come to the community center for a day and take everything, palletize it, and then they took it. The issue now is that the commodity prices have dropped so low that those companies aren't willing to do that for free anymore. Those were completely free to us. They took the goods, they recycled them, they made the money. But due to the markets right now, nobody's willing to do that. At a Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission meeting today, I sat on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. We had a big discussion about that because these smaller cities are having trouble getting rid of any of their hazardous waste, much less e-waste, because no one's willing to come take it anymore.
I just wanted to repeat that with that household hazardous waste, it's important that you put it at your door, not at the street, because we don't need people going by saying, oh, what's this, taking it and ending up with a bunch of hazardous waste that then gets thrown in our waterways or in our trash.
That's a very good point, and that was the other point I was going to make is, yes, along with that, we don't need our employees mistaking it for trash and then it ending up in our landfill, which is the whole reason that we have this in the first place, is to keep it out. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We do have one last city manager's report that came at the request of Councilmember Lofgren, which is an update on our master plans. And so I know Mike will go through this very fast, indeed.
And yes, I will. So again, well, good evening, Madam Pro Temp and Council. This is a very quick update on where we are with the master plan. So as you know, we have 4 master plans that are currently underway. We have the downtown master plan, the parks master plan, thoroughfare master plan, and the drainage master plan update. So this is the, so I'm gonna start with the downtown master plan. So the consulting team is Friesen Nichols, as you know. They are working with a very hard-working steering committee in the Main Street Board, and you should see this item come to you for approval in August of this year. So again, like when we adopt the, when you adopt the plan, it will be a component of the 2035 comp plan. So in terms of where we are in the planning process, fairly quickly, so the first task was the public engagement, and we are at 90% complete. Second task was the condition analysis, snapshot, what's the current condition of downtown. So the consultants have written the first 2 chapters, and that's about 100%. And now they are working on the visioning process with the committee in terms of what is the vision for downtown and what are the goals and so forth. So that's 80% done. So, and then we have the master plan and then the tools, the funding tools. Again, the plan adoption will come to you August 2021. In terms of the major themes or findings, so from the process, we've learned that there's a pent-up demand for activity downtown. People or residents want to see downtown thrive. They want downtown to be the center of the community. There is a high demand to make downtown more walkable, create a culture and arts district. And another one that keeps coming up is the need for more nightlife, music downtown, and of course for housing and residential living downtown. In terms of what's remaining tasks, draft master plan, so that's underway. The consultants are working on that with the committee. June 2nd, we'll have our second public survey, and that's to prioritize the activities for downtown. And then July, draft implementation and funding tools, and of course, city council approval, August 2021. So that's the update on the downtown master plan, and Danielle Williams has been the point person working with the committee and the Main Street Board and the consultant on this project. The next update is the where we are with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The consultant team is Half and Associates, and the Parks Commission is actually leading this effort with Lee Keeling serving as chair. Again, we anticipate this coming to council for your approval in October. This is where we are in the planning process, 100% complete in regards to the background and research. Public outreach is still ongoing, we at 80%, and of course, the plan will come to you in October. In terms of the major findings or themes, there's a high demand for dog parks in our parks. We have 16 parks altogether. So that's the first thing we hear. We want a dog park. The second thing we hear is the upgraded playgrounds, restrooms in the parks, more trails, and some water features, i.e. splash pads, spray pads. Remaining tasks, the conceptual plans, we're still working on those, and I would like to thank the council members who have participated so far. I know last one, Councilman Barknight and Ms. Scott were in attendance for the Ethel Lee Tracy conceptual. So we are developing 3 conceptual plans, or like the mini master plans for Ethel Lee Tracy, Riverside Park, and MLK Park. So this plan should be done and presented to you for approval in October 2021. The third is the Thoroughfare Master Plan. The consultant is ATG Alliance Transportation Group. There is an advisory committee which includes the county participation. This plan should come to you for approval in June of this year. This is where we are with the planning process. So we are getting very close. As you can see on the project tasks, some of the major findings, the roadway segments are projected to experience severe congestion by 2025. There are some gaps in the street network, and some of the arterial roads are beginning to fail because of spillover traffic or cut through. This is the remaining tasks. We have stakeholder meeting that was today. And then we have the draft plan that's being worked on now, and the anticipation adoption is June of this year. Julie Folger and Maggie Bergerons are the point person staff working on this plan. And for the Parks Master Plan, Jason Alfaro is the lead staff. And the last plan that we are working on is the Drainage Master Plan update. Consulting team is Civil Tech Engineering and Urban Engineering. There's a technical committee, and this plan will come to you for approval in June. So same time period as the Thoroughfare Master Plan. So this is where we are in the planning process. As you can see, all the tasks are well underway, close to completion. Some of the remaining tasks is the quality control, and that's to make sure the data, the GIS system is in place and they're accurate. Finalize the parcel evaluations because we are evaluating 30 parcels large parcels to see how we can drain those parcels for development. We have a second stakeholder meeting scheduled in early May and city council approval in June of this year. In terms of opportunities for public involvement, again, the more public involvement, the better the plan. So we are making good progress in involving the community. We have a dedicated webpage. It's victoriatx.gov/masterplans. And anyone can go on this webpage and they can get these things. One, they can find out who's on the advisory committee, when are the meetings, open houses, you have online surveys and draft reports. And also, the consultants are ready or prepared to meet with you one-on-one if you need an update before it's presented to City Council. So they've offered that to you. I know the Parks Master Plan, probably in May, we are still coordinating. We would like to have a joint meeting between City Council and the Parks Commission to talk about the conceptual plans, because you have the Ethel Lee Tracy, Riverside, and MLK Park. So we need to talk about the conceptual plans and see what we are suggesting in those parks. So this concludes my quick presentation. And I have the staff here if you have any questions.
I'll just, Mike, if you don't mind, I'll just briefly add that there is another master plan that has been in the works for quite some time that doesn't really necessitate a lot of public input, so it kind of gets lost in, our efforts to, seek public input. And it didn't get much love tonight from Daryl or Mike, but there has been an effort, or there is a master plan for our landfill. And so our landfill has been going through an expansion master plan, and we do anticipate that plan to be completed in June. The firm involved with that project at Burns and McDonough, they've done some work for us for a very long time, so you're probably familiar with them. That particular plan wouldn't necessitate, any specific council action, but we obviously want to share that with council whenever it's ready. So that'll also happen in the summer time at some point. The other point I'll make is that, as you notice, a lot of these plans will be officially completed or officially adopted or presented, come summertime. But we want to be mindful of some of what we've already learned. And so we're already having conversations about, what are the low-hanging fruit opportunities that we might be able to incorporate into the fiscal year 22 budget. We don't need to wait until August to kind of agree, on what's important from based on the information that we already know. And so providing updates like tonight hopefully helps us and helps you be familiar with where those plans are headed, so that you're not surprised by conversations that we may want to have as part of the budget presentations. But as Mike said, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Facilities, is that kicked off yet?
It is officially not kicked off.
Okay.
That is technically, another master plan that is in the works. Derek.
The RFQ for the facilities master plan, from what Derek is spearheading, that is supposed to be released this Sunday. That's the RFQ for the facilities master plan.
And we will find it
Thank you,
also on
Derek.
that website? It'll be on that website also?
No, we can incorporate it. Absolutely. We want to be transparent, but, the priority for the master plans we included on the website were the ones that predominantly necessitate or are appropriate to solicit public input. Some of the master plans that are more operational in nature for us, we're kind of just doing. And so, but we can gladly, put the information out there to be transparent. But as it relates to our facility assessment study, right, that's not anything that we envision having specific public input on. That's more of just, having somebody literally assess the facilities so we can gather as much information. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting today with Roger and his department, trying to kind of plan out how we envision the future of that department. Because as you recall, the Building and Equipment Services Department has only been in existence for less than 2 years. And so part of what we plan to use that plan for is to help us develop a more proactive preventative maintenance program. We don't know what we don't know. And so in order for us to truly get, for different elements into some type of rotation, we need to understand as much as we can about it. And so that plan will help us do that. As well as have set the groundwork for strategic effort on any expansions that we might need in terms of facilities or major renovations. It's all at play.
And does
So-
that include the public safety building?
The public safety facility is not included in that particular RFQ because that assessment is already being worked on by the consultant that was involved with the initial one in 2018. And so what we're doing is simply rehiring, if you will, that same architect that was involved with that program, since they're already very familiar with the needs of police and fire. We are in the process of officially engaging them again. And so I envision that they'll be back in town meeting with police and fire within the end of the month to kind of ramp that up so we can present some options to council about how we can have better facilities for administration of both, but mainly police.
Oh, exactly. I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Jesus, for the updates.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derek.
And thank you for being proactive, seeing the low-hanging fruit and
Thank you,
incorporating.
He's a man of a lot of words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Derek.
Okay.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Derek.
Thank you all for being proactive.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay.
All right, those are all the city managers we have for this evening.
Okay, at this time, we're going to break off into executive session at 7:37.
The city council will recess into executive session at 7:37. The subject of the matter of the executive session deliberation is as follows. The executive session in accordance with Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with attorney on a matter involving pending or contemplated litigation and other matter in which the duty of the attorney to the government body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the Texas State Bar. The State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Open Government Meetings Act and Texas executive session in accordance with Texas Government Code 551.087 to discuss or deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect that the city council seeks to have, locate, stay, or expand in the near the territory of the city of Victoria and with which the city of Victoria is conducting economic development negotiations.
They're on the screen, but on the agenda, it should just be.